Matthew, everyday audiophile, music lover, and I think I'm in love with the tube amp that is. I just received Grand Finale V12. I'll post some pictures here. It is a 6v6 tube amp that is 6v6s per channel, producing about 40 watts. I hate to say it, I have a feeling, this gut feeling when I listen to it, that it is better, different, but maybe slightly better than my EL84 monoblocks from Triode Labs. Those are kind of behind me here. You can barely see them now. Finale is the sister company to Triode Lab, made by the same mastermind, Frank. That review will be forthcoming, but it's wonderful. So let's get started. We're not talking about that today. As the beer might suggest, this is the long time coming from Denton County Brewing. I am finally reviewing the Holo Audio Red today. Let's do it. Set that down. Open a beer. I will probably have to adjust this lighting on the next video. I'm in a new chair today. I couldn't pass up the sale on this chair from IKEA. I needed something new. So quickly on the beer. This is a fruited Berliner Weisse. It's 5.1%. I think it is a lovely beer for that 5%. I'm not always in the mood for this type of beer, but I think it's delicious. Let's get down to business. I have a lot to talk about with this Holo Audio Red, and I'm going to try to squeeze it all in to a standard length video. So, I have been running this not only in my media room, but also in my office to hear it in two different systems and also hear all of the outputs. So in my media room, I can really only have used I2S and USB. So I'll be able to provide those comparisons. But when down in my office, I was able to hook up everything. So USB out, the BNC out, the coax out, the optical out, and I2S. AES is the only one that I wasn't able to compare, but for everything else, I will be able to give a comparison. I have notes here that I'm going to read off. So first things first, this is a hefty unit. It doesn't seem like it when you're looking at it, but since it's all aluminum here, high quality parts on the inside, you feel like you get a lot of money, or a lot of worth for that dollar that you spent. It is based on a Raspberry Pi, so I was interested in comparing it to my previous streamer, which is just a Raspberry Pi, right? So this is the Raspberry Pi. I think it's 0. It's just the drop-in board that connects to a full other PCB. So the USB out here is isolated. It's as clean of a 5-volt signal as you can get, and I'll have comments on that in a sec. But really, what you're getting is you're getting this complete platform that integrates with Roon very easily, which is what I use it with. For I2S, there are these little dip switches in the bottom, and if you look at the manual, you can configure the I2S output to whatever your receiving device is. One of the selections, I think it's Alt Mode 1, most closely compares with the PS Audio standard, and that is what the Live Harmony DAC uses, and that's what the Audio S5 and S5B use. So it's largely what I stuck with. Alt 3 also works, and I think the channels were reversed, but it's Alt 1. Alt 1 is what we want. So, first things first. Let me pull out my trusty phone that has all the notes. I'm going to go down what I have written here. And the first thing that I want to say, though, is BNC and coax. They're both largely the same. The Harmony DAC didn't have BNC, but the audio DAC is. It is BNC, so you have to use a BNC connector with it. and it also has a regular coax. So I was able to compare coax and the BNC, and to my ears, they both sound the same. So when I say coax, you can safely assume that I mean either of these, whether it's BNC with the true, it's supposed to be a true 75 ohm connection, which I'm pretty sure it is based on what I heard, and then coax. And that's where we're going to start. So coax, I2S, right, USB, and optical. So first, through the Harmony DAC, which in my opinion has been a little bit more revealing of changes in these connection types. When I've connected stuff to the audio, and I've said this before, Pedja the designer has done such a wonderful job of his USB implementation and his coax implementation and all of that, that these different connection types have not made as much a difference as the quality of the recording itself or the upsampling to 384.16. That has made a bigger difference to my ears, again, than the, using coax versus USB. Now, USB is the only one that's going to let you go to 384.16. I wasn't able to achieve that with with I2S or with coax, so it's obviously my choice or what I would choose. But yeah, sorry, my kids are outside trying to figure out what they're doing there. So Harmony DAC. Let's start with coax. The test tracks that we used here, let's go over those first. I listened to Taylor Swift Exile, which I think is just one of her most well-known tracks when it comes to, audiophile recordings, which you get in there. Abraham Alexander, Wilder Woods, they have a track that they do together called Bring It On Home, which is so good. So good. Dirty Projectors, Gun Has No Trigger. It's to me the beat that you get and the choir it makes for a wonderful track to listen to and compare. And then DJ Shadow, Nobody Speaks. So this is a wide range of tracks, covers a good number of genres, and my notes are going to be always in relation to these 4 tracks. I'll provide links to them down below in case you want to go listen to them on Qobuz, which is my streaming platform. So first, coax or BNC, whichever one you prefer. To my ears, again, with this Holo Audio Red connected to the live Harmony DAC, the vocals, to me, were slightly more recessed in the soundstage. So if I'm comparing USB as a bass line and the vocals go, in a straight line from left to right, on coax, they were a little bit further back in the stage. And that doesn't mean all the way back. This just means instead of being in line with the speakers, they're now at the wall behind the speakers. And for some people, they may find that enjoyable because it gives that sense of a larger space. Again, in addition to that kind of being recessed in the soundstage, I also heard a little bit more bass kick, a little more attack on the bass notes. Now, it didn't feel like it went as deep compared to USB, but there was just a little bit more attack on the bass. Everything that was probably 60 hertz and down, 80 hertz and down. Now, that said, if you're going to lean on the scale of having a little bit more bass, what this lost in comparison was kind of that air around the notes. Everything above 5K, 4K, just a little bit less airy and whimsical in the high notes. So if that's something that you enjoy, I probably wouldn't listen to RCA or RCA coax and BNC. But that's just what I heard. It wasn't enough to make me hate how it sounded. With some types of music, I thought it sounded better than USB. But I don't just listen to, one specific type of music. So going on from coax is I2S. And that's really the reason why I purchased this, was I2S. I've heard a lot of things about I2S being superior with the Live Harmony DAC, superior with my audio DAC, which that review is going to be forthcoming as well. I have a big surprise in that world. So let's talk about I2S though. Most prominent vocals. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if was the cable I was using. I hate talking about cables, but I don't know if it was the cable, but the male and female vocals seem to have just a little bit more warmth, a little more oomph to the body of that vocal that I'd kind of attribute to listening to like a tube amp. So again, compared to coax, compared to USB, just the vocals were just a little bit more lively, a little bit more there. I could see why people prefer I2S in that case, because if I'm listening to female vocals, I2S was 110% my preferred way of listening to it. It sounded a little bit more realistic to me. But I think it was because of that little bit of humph and a little bit of warmth in the vocal region. So looking again at my notes here, more air than coax, so a little bit more airy in the high end notes, but not as much as USB. So it kind of sat there in the middle. The bass, not as much kick, a little bit more laid back. Again, this is kind of a tubey presentation to me, where the bass is slightly more relaxed. It still went deeper than coax, but it was just a little bit more relaxed, a little bit, still had the nuance. You still got the bass when it was demanded. It wasn't a sharp attack compared to coax. And kind of that's my general view of I2S. The air, I kind of want to circle back to that. It was very close to USB. I want to say not as much as USB, but you could probably put them side by side. This is me switching back and forth and trying to make out those differences. In most tracks, it was so minimal. All right, USB. How does USB sound? And more specifically, how does USB sound to just a plain old Raspberry Pi? Because if you're going to spin this and it's still Raspberry Pi based, you would expect it to still be better. I mean, for what, $800, this better sound better than a $35 Raspberry Pi. So, compared to the Raspberry Pi, we'll start from there. Wider soundstage, deeper soundstage. The first thing I noticed, more so than any of that, was that lower noise floor. Again, this is just my experience. It wasn't a night and day difference like that made this Holo Audio Red worth, $700 more than a Raspberry Pi. But if I was looking for that last little bit, I wanted, the reason that I got this is because I wanted that little bit more air. I was running them with the RS10s, right? I don't have them in the room right now, but I was running them with the RS10s, which already had a little bit of issues with that front to back sound staging. And, left to right was great, but switching it out for this Holo Audio Red, it brought a more expansive soundstage left to right. It was way more detailed left to right. So before if I'm looking at a drum player, it was a little bit fuzzy where they were hitting the drums. With the Red, it's pinpoint accurate, and you got a much bigger sense of that front to back soundstage. So USB overall, much cleaner in this one. Whether it's worth it, it's really up to you if you want to spend that money. The one area that I felt like USB was a little bit more competent than I2S was when you were listening to the nuances in instrument playback, right? So vocals, I2S reigned supreme if I'm listening to those vocals. But like the little nuances from guitar players or orchestral music, just to like with them moving their hands, hearing that slide, I could still hear it on USB, just or on I2S, but on USB it was just a little bit better, a little bit more prominent, perhaps. So if that's something that you look for, those little nuances, which me as a bass player, I mean, that's originally what I went to school for before changing. It matters to me. So I'm a little back and forth on the I2S USB, but that's kind of where that lands. My thoughts on this kind of as a whole. As an $800 streamer, I think it is kind of in a no man's land where you will get a lot of people saying, you know, that it doesn't compare to the likes of, say, Render. But my experience with this has been that it's probably the best streamer under $5,000. And I say that because of the wonderful engineering that Holo Audio has done inside of this, right? You get an extraordinarily clean I2S output. There's you can find a review online of people that have measured it, and it's extraordinarily clean. And I can confirm, I2S going forward is probably going to be my primary method of listening to music. USB's great, but I2S for most of it. Jazz was amazing. So again, $800, or I think it's $878 or $787. Get those numbers mixed up. I think it's a great price. And I can't wait to test other DACs going forward on this. It's going to be my reference for the time being. I to be honest, I don't have the desire to spend $15,000 on an Render N20. It's just outside of my price bracket. But again, until next time, cheers.